Do a quick book recommendation, The Exodus by Richard Elliot Friedman. Subtitle is How It Happened and Why It Matters. I got this book when it came out in 2017, so 9 years ago, and it had a pretty profound impact in a lot of circles that I was aware of, because Richard Elliot Friedman is a secular, highly regarded academic scholar of the Bible. He is Jewish, but he's not known as a religious scholar of the Bible. He's known as a academic scholar of the Bible, and particularly focusing on the Torah. And he released this book, and it was really interesting because there was a lot of stuff happening in the Jewish world with textual study. Sefaria was kind of new and was kind of taking over the Jewish world. We're studying Jewish text and talking about engaging with different ideas. And Richard Elliot Friedman posited that, unlike what some people would say in academic circles, that there's no evidence for an exodus from Egypt, he actually pointed out that no, there is evidence for an exodus from Egypt, but it's very interesting. His theory that he puts forth is that there was an Israelite culture in the land of Canaan, and that a group of clans that made up a tribe left Egypt as Semitic people and joined the Israelites, and that these people are the ones that we refer to as the Leviim, or the Levites. And the reason he says that is because our oldest biblical textual passages that we have mention the tribes of Israel without mentioning the Levites. Things like the Song of Deborah, the Song of Deborah in the book of Shoftim, in the book of Judges, the Levites aren't mentioned. And the Levites are people who are given permission to live among the people of Israel, but not own land, and yet they are provided for, and they function as a priestly service to the people of Israel. And the book that regulates how to live both as Levites and as Israelites is the book of Vayikra, the book of Leviticus. And it becomes part of the Torah, and the Torah is put together from different passages, different ideas of different people in the land of Canaan, different Israelite people in the land of Canaan, and it functions together. It's kind of sewn together, what some people call redacted, as an editor puts it all together. And so you end up having the most famous verse in the Torah, often misattributed to Jesus, which is V'ahavta l'reika kamoka, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. And people argue over whether or not neighbor is, or really your fellow, whether that's your fellow Israelite, your fellow Jew, or just a person in general. And yet, several verses later, it says very specifically, and you shall not oppress the stranger, for you know what it's like to be a stranger. You were strangers in the land of Egypt. And we are told to take care of the stranger, the one who is far off from us, and that we are to embrace them and to make sure that they're cared for. And Richard Elliot Friedman makes this very interesting kind of hypothesis of, and this is, as the new atheist movement, I would say, was about to decline significantly, but Dawkins was still pretty well known. And he makes this idea like, look, you don't have to believe in God. You don't have to believe in the divine origin of the Torah. But the evidence seems to show that there was an ancient Semitic people who left Egypt, who were absorbed into another Semitic people in Canaan, and that the religious ideals of this culture were that you should love your neighbor, and that you should care specifically for the stranger, for the other, the person who's completely different from you. And the fact that that made an impact on Western culture and civilization, the likelihood of which is it's not based in humanism, and it's based in this particular story. And he makes the case that there was an exodus that happened, and that it matters because it has changed the course of the world, that whether you are religious or humanistic, whether you are a believer or an agnostic, it doesn't matter, that the notion that we should care for people who are different from us, and that we should give them equal rights and not only not oppress them, but help them. That notion is rooted in the reality of this story. And I'm thinking of it because this week in the synagogue, we are reading this Torah portion, what's called the Holiness Code, Akrei Mot and Kedushim, where, yes, there are verses about prohibitions against homosexual intercourse between men and not mixing different fibers together, what's called shatnez in Judaism. But we're also told to love our neighbors ourselves and to care for those who are different from us, and to remember that we were strangers ourselves, and so that we know what it's like to be in this position. And Richard Elliot Friedman makes the case that this, if his theory is correct, that the Levi'im, the Levites, were absorbed into the people of Israel, this is even more significant because the story became embraced by all the Israelite people in Canaan. And of course, eventually it's going to be their story as well because they're going to be dispersed and exiled. But this notion that a people kind of embraced it, it was kind of like in America embracing the immigrant narrative of Ellis Island, even if your family were daughters of the American Revolution. Like if the idea is that even if you've been here before or you've come here after, embracing that narrative, that story, that we all came over here and we all had to make a place for ourselves. And if that's your story, if that's your narrative, then that impacts the way you see the world and others around you. And so it's a really great book. It makes a really great case. It's kind of helped me as someone who at the time was kind of wavering between belief and unbelief, and really, and I say unbelief, but whether or not I could really embrace beyond just being agnostic and just positive faith understanding. And I found myself really delighting in just the basics of this event occurred in some way and has impacted us ever since. And so I recommend that again. That's The Exodus by Richard Elliot Friedman.